Greetings, fellow job engineers. It's Tiki here,
And Blue Dragon 5.
and we're here to celebrate a monumentous occasion. We're counting down our top 100 favorite movies of the decade.
All right, I'm done. gotta get the Bane impression in there while I can, Dragon. Okay, so folks, this is something that I have been anticipating for. Let me do the math on this. Gonna get a little social network joke in here to kind of set the mood for the social network before we get to that way later on in the countdown. All right, let me do the math on this, Dragon. Let me do the math. Carry the zero. I've been working on this for 10 years. 10 years, lo and behold, we're here. So, Dragon, I'm stoked for this. Of course, I've been a film fan since the early 2000s, roughly, but I would say probably 2007 was my big sort of turnaround of like, okay, I'm studying the Oscar films of it all, the There Will Be Bloods, the No Country for Old Men. I'm in on it. And honestly, the last couple years, at least in terms of Oscar caliber movies, were a little rough. You know, the 2008, 2009, outside of The Dark Knight, which probably stands above everything else in that time frame. But Dragon, then 2010 came along, and 2010 blew my mind in terms of being an excellent year for film. 2019 blew my mind. We've talked about 2019 ad nauseum between our countdowns and between our movie memoirs. And in between are a lot of other really strong years, and also 2011. So that's going to set the tone, Dragon. You're going to notice in my top 100 movies of the decade, we're going to do this in 5 parts. You're going to notice, Dragon, in this first part, we're cracking out a lot of 2011, man. In my list, at least. I don't know what to tell you. There's just something about that year that didn't really click for me. So I like a lot of the movies. Obviously, like they're on the list for a reason. I like all the movies that are on here, but they're on the lower end of things. One 2011 movie in particular makes the top 25. We'll get to that way later. But Dragon, my criteria for this is going to be a mix of obviously I think I'm leaning a bit maybe 60% favorite. I'm really in that sort of mindset of what do I like? What is my personal taste? What do I see going back and rewatching? However, Dragon, there are definitely movies on this list for me personally that I can't see myself going back and rewatching, but I do think left a mark on cinema, and I do think definitely deserve to be on the top 100 list. So I'm going kind of 60% my personal taste, 40% cultural impact, and kind of like a Venn diagram in the middle. And also, importantly, folks, for my list, not for Dragon's list, Dragon did his differently. I'll throw it to him in a minute. For my list, I did 10 movies from each of the 10 years. I kind of made a challenge to myself to do that. Now, while doing that, you will notice, I kind of had a lot of fun doing some mathematics here, but you will notice that 2011 is definitely the, on average, the lowest charting of the years. But we'll get to that. So, Dragon, I'm going to throw it over to you. Give me your criteria, and then we'll get things started. We got a long ways to go here. This is just the first of a 5-part series. We're going to do a 5-part series with 20 films apiece. Actually, Dragon, before I throw it over to you, just gonna throw out some shout outs into the comments. Claude Garinga here says the 2010 decade was definitely a game changer for the entertainment industry, and I agree, Claude. I agree. For better, I would say mostly for better. In some ways, it got a little bit more homogenized and commercialized, but I would say, yeah, the techniques and the filmmaking, it's definitely a great decade for me. Let's see. And then we got Donovan Martin in the chat here. Donovan's raving about 2010. He said he's also Donovan. I'm going to pull this up because I don't think I know I don't have it on my list. I don't think Dragon does either. But he says Tron Legacy period, one of my favorite childhood memories. I still listen to the soundtrack to this day. Donovan, I'm going to say I'm not a huge fan of the plot of Tron Legacy, but I love that soundtrack, man. I know exactly what you're talking about with that soundtrack. That soundtrack kicks ass for sure. So Tron Legacy is a great, bold mix of, visuals paired to music. I also remember that was maybe one of my favorite 3D Disney films. I saw it in 3D, and I remember the 3D really working with that one. All right, anyways, Dragon, I'm going to throw it to you.
Right, so we're on 100 to 81, this installment. Let me put it this way. This list is really hard to cultivate, first of all. I wish it was, the top 200 favorite films of the decade. I really do. It makes things a lot easier, but 100 is a dramatic number, so do what you can. So my logic was, and unfortunately some stuff I really wanted on there didn't make the cut, but basically my criteria for the whole was I had a balance of favorite and a little bit of objective best, so there's kind of a mix of those two elements in the ranking. Basically the takeaway is, these, no matter where they rank, these are 100 of the best, the best of the decade. There are no losers in the bunch. I want to make that clear. Out of the 100 here, there's not a loser in the bunch.
Totally.
And in this installment particularly, if there's a theme to this installment for me, basically each kind of section does have kind of like a theme. Obviously, 20 to 1 would be the best of the best, as you can probably imagine. This a lot of personal favorites. I tried to balance a little bit of objectivity. So let me put it this way: 181 are a lot of personal favorites and a lot of rewatchability, let's call it. So these are ones that I want to make clear. All 100 entries are movies I would stand behind no matter what. I can stand behind every pick on the list here. But some, again, I put a little bit more of the personal spin on kind of the bottom tier, so to speak. And we kind of get into the big leagues and things kind of speak for themselves a little bit more. So it's kind of where we're at.
Makes sense.
Okay.
All right, Donovan, all the movies you're pointing out, it's like obviously, Fury Road, spoiler alert, Fury Road is going to be in the last installment on this list for me. That's going to be in part 5, Donovan. I'm not going to say where in the top 20 it is, but I will say that is in my top 20 for sure. Okay, Dragon, so with that in mind, let's kick things off. We're going to try and be brief with this, folks. My goal is going to be maybe about a minute a piece for the individual installments. And bear in mind, folks, once we get into that, once we get into part 5, once we get into the top 20, I fully expect that to be a 3-hour podcast, and that's fine. But for these initial few podcasts, Dragon, let's try and keep it brief. But go ahead. What is your number 100?
All right, number 100 for me, Limitless from 2011. So Limitless, this was a Neil Berger film, a guy who also went on to do The Upside, by the way, one that came out last year, which is also pretty good. Anyway, so it's a great premise, the NZT pill, the idea of you take this special little clear pill, it allows you to tap into the other 90%, the other 90% of the brain's potential. It's one of those concepts of the story. It's really good. It kind of has like this great kind of in medias res structure, as in we're kind of in the thick of the action at the start. We kind of go back. The main reason this is on here, we visualize kind of an alternative perspective in Bradley Cooper's mind very well. The style of the Limitless concept has always been something truly remarkable. It's very inventive. It birthed a really solid follow-up in the TV series, which you can find on Netflix, folks. Seriously, it's had a really good spin-off show that is kind of a sequel to the movie, so it all does connect, and Bradley Cooper does play a role in the show. It's really neat. Also, a little fun fact, this is, I believe, the first pairing of De Niro and Bradley Cooper, so it's a little fun fact there. It's very solid, definitely one. This one comes on TV a lot, I'm kind of compelled to watch at least a few minutes of it, but I'd probably go to the series a little bit more.
Yeah, I've never actually seen this one, but I think I would like it just based on what I know about it, especially, me, Dragon. I love a good framing device, and from the sounds of it, it sounds like this one has a really good framing device.
It does, but trust me, man, the pill, you're going to go gaga for NZT if you ever watch this movie, man. You're going to be like, oh my God, such an ingenious concept, based on a book, actually, too.
All right. Okay, and also, what year was this released?
2011.
2000. Okay, well, here we go with the 2011. Okay, my number 100, also from 2011. Dragon, honestly, I picked this as my number 100, kind of set the tone. I think one of the big things, I'm going to tread lightly with this, but one of the big things that the 2010s decade is going to be remembered for is politics, obviously. I don't really want to say anything more than that, but it's like, politically speaking, this was a historical decade, to say the least. I mean, you know. So with that in mind, Dragon, 6 years before the world went to hell in a handbasket, for better or worse, 6 years before that, 6 years before the 2016 elections, we got George Clooney's The Ides of March. Dragon, I put this at the top of my list because simply it is a very prophetic movie. It didn't really stick with me all that much, but it stuck with me enough to where I had to rank out the 2011 movies, you know, and as I said, 2011 is my least favorite year of the decade, but still, this deserves a spot, man. This deserves a spot because this is very much a look into the kind of the dog-eat-dog world of politics and how you cannot play a clean political game. Ryan Gosling, this is kind of like one of the big starts of Ryan Gosling's. I would say Gosling is one of the big, you'll notice on this individual image, Dragon, 3 different Gosling movies. And that's not the last we'll see of Gosling on my list. Gosling had a huge decade. And I would say he's great here, and basically his role is that he's a bright up and coming political advisor to George Clooney, who's running for president. He's really wants to get the job done and keep his hands clean and support his candidate. Lo and behold, Dragon, some shady stuff goes down with Clooney, and he has to decide if he wants to advance his career or if he wants to stay loyal. It's a tumultuous ride. It co-stars Philip Seymour Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, and Marissa Tomei, so it's got an all-star cast. It's directed by George Clooney. I would check it out if you get the shot, and like I said, it's just I feel like it's very appropriate to put it in the number 100 spot, given that our least favorite thing about the decade was the politics, but it's also arguably the most important thing about the decade, so I feel like number 100 for the Ides of March is very appropriate. All right, throwing it back to you, Dragon, number 99.
Number 99 is Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street Legacy. Which
came out. Was this the big 6-hour one?
No. This is the 4-hour one. This is the
Okay, well, 4 hours, 6 8. It's the long one. All right.
If you want to be uber technical, it's 3 hours and 59 minutes. I don't think that's what I'm saying. Let's not split hairs. Point being, this is the the Crystal Lake one's the super long one you're thinking of. That's like the 7-hour. Anyway, point being.
Oh yes.
This came out in 2010. Just made the cut. Believe me, folks, there's some that just didn't make the cut, like Waking Sleeping Beauty. Unfortunately, didn't make the cutoff because of stupid film festivals. I'm sorry, folks. But anyway, point being, so Never Sleep Again, Nightmare on Elm Street Legacy. This documentary, it gave me newfound respect for the slasher horror genre and kind of the horror franchise, as it were. It's 4 hours. It's very thorough. It's very entertaining. It's honestly, it resonates even more on the rewatch since Wes Craven's passing, as it ends on a really effective note with Wes Craven in retrospect. And they had no idea, of course, at the time this happened, he was very much kind of alive and well, and it kind of adds like a little bit of resonance, like, oh man, this thing really meant something. And honestly, the big reason I recommend this to you folks is it's an examination of the franchises of old, like pre-MCU. Like now we're very much used to it, but this is like the end of like. This is like on the precipice of the remake of Elm Street coming out. They were so dissatisfied with that because they loved the originals. They made this epic documentary. I'm like, look at how great this franchise was and how like we're going to just pave over it. And of course, the new one went nowhere, so it was really all for nothing. But it produced a darn good documentary. So seriously, folks, check it out. I went to a horror con in essence because of this movie. It's darn good.
Cool. It also, Dragon, I will set a tone that, oh my God, the 2010s were Dragon, you and I, like, we always kind of have this fascinating relationship where I'm way more of a horror guy than you are. You know, I love my horror movies. You respect horror movies from a distance. You know, you don't really have the stomach to watch them, but you love the making of them. You find
as I'm saying, this was the first making of that really got me. This is what got me
Right.
into the making of things right here.
So I will set the tone, Dragon, that the 2010s, I think, are the best decade ever for horror movies. I think the 2010s for horror movies this is a bold statement. This is a bold statement here, but I do think that the 2010s for horror movies are better than the 70s. The 70s, like, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. The heavy hitters for the horror genre in the 2010s, to be sure. All right, really quick, I want to point out a couple of Donovan's comments here. Donovan says, "Can't forget Megamind and Legend of the Guardians." Dragon, I'm sure you have Megamind way farther down on your list.
I do, Don. You have to sit tight for it. It's going to be a long look to get to that one because I have a great fondness for Megamind, but you'll have to wait and see where that one lands.
Okay. Conjuring 2, Donovan, we will talk about that on this video. Stay tuned. Conjuring 2 is in this this bracket for me. And also, Real Steel deserves more love. Dragon, that's one I never got around to, but I
have seen that.
Want to see. Yeah, I think it looks really solid. And of course, Hugh Jackman, I think, is another actor that, you know, obviously in the 2000s, people knew Hugh Jackman for Wolverine first and foremost. I feel like in the 2010s, Hugh Jackman really branched out with stuff like Les Mis, like, you know, his musicals, Greatest Showman, of course, Logan, and Prisoners, which we'll get to way further down on the list for me. So,
well, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, just the shout out because I think Donovan brought up earlier Rise of the Guardians. The kid from Real Steel, because he worked with Hugh Jackman, of course, Hugh Jackman in Rise of the Guardians. He recommended that kid, and he ended up in the movie because he was really impressed him in that. Unfortunately, Rise of the Guardians didn't make my cut because I would have loved to put it there, folks. But there's some other really great holiday-related movies I had to put on there in its place. So,
all right,
say Levy.
Okay. So my number 99, Dragon. Oh wait, hold on. There we go. Okay, my number 99 is a movie that you also have in this bracket, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. But it is Rango.
Hey!
Yeah, so this is one of the more original and bold Nickelodeon movies that has ever been made, to be sure. Dragon, I've only seen this movie once, but I remember the art style more than anything else, and I also remember like just the intensity of the movie in terms of like the desperation for water and how that kind of like factors into the plot. I think the movie's got kind of like a hit and miss quality to me for the characters and the character designs. I think some of the characters stand out. Some of the characters are pretty ugly to look at. But I think overall the art direction, the originality, kind of like the bold storytelling, and also, Dragon, my personal favorite moment in the movie is the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas scene. You know what scene that is, right?
I know.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Like, it's as soon as that happened, I was like, okay. Like, Dragon, honestly, that to me is like the Nickelodeon equivalent of the Walter and Jesse cameo in Zootopia. I'm like, oh my god, that made an animated movie. So yeah, Rango, I'm sure you'll have stuff to say about it as well. But yeah, overall, like I said, it's on the list mostly for the originality and the art design. It's not my favorite plot in the world. I do think it kind of suffers from the liar reveal quite a bit. I do think it, like, I don't think once we get to the liar reveal, I don't think it drags it out like it, but I do think it drags out, like, it takes forever to get to the point of getting to the liar revealed. At least that's what I remember. Anyway, so I will let you talk about Rango when you get to it, of course. So let's flip it over to you with your number 98.
All right, number 98. Batman Year One, 2011.
Okay.
So again, I wanted to try to be a little objective here because I have a great fun. I love Batman Year One. Of course, you get into the age old issue of like is the book better than the movie, and that's what people. There's a lot of arbitration over people like comparing it to the book, which obviously it's an adaptation of the book. So, but it had to soften some things. Like there's no smoking in the movie and stuff like that. Some people are really precious of that sort of thing. It doesn't matter to me really, but it's. The point being, this movie really gives an iconic story kind of new life, and really reached me. Of course, we don't have Batman Begins or the Scott Snyder Batman without Year One. That kind of inspired both of those lots. Of course, the best of Batman, one could argue. Again, Batman Year One, of course, the root of like Batman as the vigilante story, and of course the Batman Gordon relationship as well. And this is what the big reason I had to get it on the list. And I probably should have swapped with something else at the end of the day here, but here's the personally compelling thing. This is my introduction to Bryan Cranston as a serious actor. I had not seen Breaking Bad before this movie. For me, I just know him as Tim Whatley on Seinfeld, and I heard him as I've seen like a few episodes of Malcolm in the Middle. That's all I kind of knew Cranston, and of course, 'Twas the Night of being the operative. The point being, those are my three Cranston introductions, and I've always heard like people talked him up, and I never really got around to Breaking Bad, but I saw him in this, and I still think it's one of the best performances he's ever given. Never in my life, because I love the character Commissioner Gordon, never in my life have I imagined like an alternative to Bob Hastings Gordon outside, not counting Gary Oldman. I'm talking like when you read a comic and you hear a voice in your head, never have I ever imagined it wouldn't be Bob Hastings, like the animated series Gordon. And Bryan Cranston is my alternate. Either if there's an older Gordon, it's going to be Hastings. If there's the younger Gordon, more color in his hair, that's Cranston, man. And the story, it all hinges on that climax, the climax of a grounded story, just Batman saving Jim Gordon Jr. On the bridge, man. That scene. I will watch the movie just to get to that scene, man. It's riveting. It's the beginning of their friendship. It's such an intense scene. Again, like it's not a big bombast. Like there's no battles on a Zeppelin or anything. It's just on a bridge. Simple, and it's lovely.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite direct-to-video DC animated movies, Dragon. I love how standalone it is. I love how gritty and kind of like street level it is. It's good. I would say it's definitely in my top tier of this sort of, DC animated brand. All right, so getting back into it, Dragon, we're going to go into my number 98. This is definitely one where I have, it's more respect than like I don't really go back and rewatch this movie all that much. I'm not a sports guy by any means. But I'm going to put it on the list mostly just for the two great lead performances in it. Number 98 is Moneyball. Of course, starring Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. And Dragon, this is mostly just on the list for Jonah Hill, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brad Pitt is really charismatic in this one. He has a couple famous temper tantrum scenes, but Jonah Hill really, like, this was kind of like the first time that people were like, hey, wait a minute, like Jonah Hill could really do something here. And I believe he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor in this movie. And of course, the film that everyone really remembers Jonah Hill for this decade is Wolf of Wall Street, and I feel like this performance is almost like a direct stepping stone to Wolf of Wall Street for Jonah Hill. Now, I will say this movie, like I said, I don't really see myself going back and rewatching it because it is a sports movie that is kind of like in the bogged down in the minutia of the sport itself, and I'm not really into sports. Honestly, Dragon, that kind of reminds me of like Ford v Ferrari in that way, where I respect Ford v Ferrari, but it's not my kind of movie. But I had to put this on there somewhere. It's also a 2011 movie. It's the third 2011 movie in a row on the list for me. So I do think it deserves a spot on the list for the performances, the charismatic characters. It's not one of my, all-time greats of the decade by any means, but I do think it's got enough clout to really warrant a spot here. So, all right, throwing it back to you, Dragon. You're number 97. Go for it.
Number 97 is John Carter from 2012.
Oh, God. John Carter. Okay, well, Donovan actually really agrees with you on this one, Dragon. So, go ahead.
Of course, John Carter, Andrew Stanton's live-action debut, and a very underrated film. It's really nice to see, Edgar Rice Burroughs' work on screen. It's kind of nice to see it adapted in any form. Really, it's because they're really compelling stories. It's nice to see them kind of get proper love, and I feel there are so many. Yeah, Mary, there's so many literary kind of origin points within Edgar Rice Burroughs' works. I mean, of course, you have like some people trace, your Star Wars, your Superman, all kind of like maybe some people have connected, like there's similar ideas in this ancient work, especially with the John Carter story. It's really fascinating, and I got to tell you, this movie has we have great performances. We have solid visuals. It really leaves me wanting more by the end of it, and I feel it's a shame it didn't do well. Of course, many people say it's kind of like the black mark on for the decade. Some people have kind of maligned it greatly. I don't know. I think it's.
It didn't perform well at the box office, but I think more people respect it than something like The Lone Ranger or.
Sure.
I don't know. It came at a simpler time, Dragon. It came at a simpler time in Disney fandom.
It did. Honestly, I feel. To me, it always felt like, I think Anderson did a really good job with this movie, and kind of like a one shot where he seems like he wanted to come back for more, but he got all the core points in the story, and there's a real feel good quality, especially by the end. Like, oh man, this is a fun ride, this is a fun experience. I really like being in this world, and I just feel it was mismarketed. A lot of people they expected the ape scene through the whole movie, but it's. I still really like it, and I would go back to it. I think it's absolutely underrated. Is the big word.
How familiar are you with the source material, Dragon? Have you read the books?
I'll admit I'm not super familiar with the source material. I know the concept of John Carter. So I'm not a diehard for John Carter. It's like the concept of the story, and I like anyway.
Well, Donovan is a very big fan of this movie. He says he would put it somewhere in his top 70 or top 60. And honestly, Donovan, that's awesome. Really respect that opinion. As for me, my dad, I grew up where my dad read the books to me as a kid. It was like that and The Hobbit were like the first books I ever really read as a kid, the first chapter books. So, yeah, let's just say, Dragon, as someone who is familiar with the source material, it's a far better movie than Last Airbender. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to compare it to that in terms of quality. I will compare Last Airbender to this in terms of basically this movie is trying to get through 3 books in the course of 2 hours, and it does feel rushed for someone who does know the source material.
But again, for someone who doesn't, pretty satisfying.
Sure. Okay, alrighty then. My number 97, Dragon. This is yet another 2011 movie. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Kind of shook out that way, but I love this movie, man. I really do, for personal reasons. I think this is the best, as far as being a movie that kind of echoes Walt Disney's sentiments of what an animated movie is. I feel like this one captures it way more than modern Disney movies do, and that is Winnie the Pooh. I respect the hell out of Winnie the Pooh, man. I really do. It's very, very simplistic. It's basically got the Disney DVD sequel formula going on, of where it's 3 stories kind of vaguely stitched together. But you know what? That's what the original Winnie the Pooh movie was, and it worked. This movie has new songs by the Sherman Brothers, or at least by Richard Sherman, and my God, that's great unto itself. It's got fantastic 2D Disney animation. It's unsung in terms of being the final 2D animated movie. Everyone just kind of automatically thinks that Princess and the Frog is the last 2D animated movie. Everyone forgets about this one. And honestly, Dragon, I do think while some of the voice acting is a little spotty in terms of obviously Jim Cummings, knocks it out of the park as always. I will say Craig Ferguson is Al, maybe not the best Al there's ever been, but generally speaking, I do think the characterization is really on point. And just overall, it is just a charming as hell little movie that got buried by a certain magical boy wizard that we'll be talking about in just a minute. So, all right. Throwing it back to you, Dragon. Go ahead.
All right, number 96, right?
Yeah, 96.
Tomorrowland from 2015.
Okay, it's interesting that John Carter and Tomorrowland are right next to each other because, of course, both of these are like really ambitious flops by Pixar directors making their live action movies.
Yes.
So go ahead,
So,
Tomorrowland. I respect the heck out of this movie, and I'm glad you have it on the list. It didn't quite make the cut for me, but go ahead.
I honestly, if it did come down to it, I would have to put Tomorrowland on there. If I ever had to like choose between the two, I'm so glad I found room for both of them. Anyway, so Tomorrowland, I love when Brad Bird directs. Period, man. I love when he directs. And with Tomorrowland, you have whimsy and a hope for the future. It's a great concept with a pin, Athena as well as Athena. Athena was kind of a great character in the movie. I loved everything we did with her. Kind of the audio animatronic with a kind of a soul that developed through the movie. There's definitely like a Lindelof twist in Act 3 for sure. I stand behind it though, logic wise. I think there is logical sense to be made, but again, I think it's another marketing thing. You're definitely being marketed like, oh god, we're going to Utopia, and well, there's an intellectual spin.
Dragon, I will describe it this way: like outside of the opening, which is fantastic, I've said this before. This is kind of one of my slogans regarding this movie. The most interesting things about the movie Tomorrowland do not take place within Tomorrowland.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. But again, I do think it makes sense where we go with the third act. But we won't go into all the arbitration about that.
I mean, with that being said, I love the second act, Dragon. The second act in particular for me, all the on the run stuff. You know, you got the nostalgia shop. You've got that crazy bathtub scene, there's a lot of stuff to like about the second act.
There is. So, for me, to put it simply, so Tomorrowland, all that's great. All of our setup is tremendous. Again, really, as you mentioned, the on the run quality, all that. For me, the best element of the film, hands down, is George Clooney's performance as Frank Walker. It's that to me. That's the reason to check out the movie. I mean, the pin thing's awesome. No one's not doing a good job in this movie. Seriously, George Clooney. This is the one this is the movie that would sell you on George Clooney, not as the main Batman, but as a Kingdom Come Batman. I would absolutely buy George Clooney. Right. After this, and of course, unfortunately, no knocks against Kevin. In the Crisis thing they did recently, it still wouldn't have turned out good because the writing would have been bad for anyone in that role. But I'm saying that's a Kingdom Come Batman I could buy right there, George Clooney. Anyway, so and of course.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And the last thing is, that scene with the end scene with Athena, between Athena and George Clooney, between Athena and Frank Walker, is the most brilliant and moving scene in the entire film. That scene melts my heart every time. It's like that. That's like one of the finest performances I've seen cultivated in a Brad Bird movie. It's phenomenal. Of course, Snow Iron Giant, mind you, but it's still, I'm just saying, of the last decade, it's a stellar sequence. It's kind of the big kind of like scene kind of towards the very end of the movie. It's magic.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and bookend that, Dragon. I think that the first 10 minutes of the movie, the World's Fair stuff, oh my god, it's like that stuff was made specifically for me, Dragon. Ah, God. To quote Kevin Smith, Dragon, I was a fan and I was served. That was a filet mignon of fan service, Dragon. Especially the Small World. First of all, with Small World, I love that they recreated the exterior of the World's Fair version of Small World when they could have just easily been like, yeah, let's just film it at Disneyland. But no, they completely fixed it up. They did film it at Disneyland, but it's entirely a different exterior. And I really love the concept of the secret drop within Small World into the it's all great. It's all great. And then the brief taste that we get of Tomorrowland in that opening, Dragon, I, like everyone else, sort of wish that the rest of the Tomorrowland stuff was like that. All right. So my number 6, Dragon, let me switch over the image. My number 26, appropriately enough, came out
90,
exactly...
96, Tiki. You said 26.
Sorry. My bad. Sorry. My number 96, I'm not used to doing such high numbers, Dragon. My number 96 came out exactly the same time as Winnie the Pooh and crushed Winnie the Pooh.
Dragon, I gotta get it on here, man. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I know you're not a Potter guy, man. I know you're not a Potter guy. But I think this movie did crush it in terms of, I will say, Dragon, I think this movie does a better job with the story, with landing the finale than the book does. I was one of the fans of Potter that, like, from the second the book ended, that last book, that ending, that epilogue, man, Albus Severus, it all really bothered me. I really don't like the epilogue. But I think this movie does a better job. I think the Battle of Hogwarts is a very cinematic set piece that works better on film than it does in a book form. I mean, man, Ray Fiennes as Voldemort is just absolutely priceless in this film. He just is chewing the scenery so much, Dragon. There's a great meme with him and Malfoy where he's just giving Malfoy a hug, which is honestly one of my favorite memes of the decade, the Voldemort hug. I mean, cinematically, David Yates, I definitely think this is his best directed Harry Potter movie ever. And also, without this movie, we wouldn't have Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts at Universal, the Harry Potter world at Universal Studios, and we wouldn't have that iconic dragon looming over the bank entrance. So I think that is one of the biggest pieces of theme park iconography of the decade, is that dragon. So, just that alone, I feel like, kind of in terms of cultural impact, definitely deserves a spot. Now, I do think it's a shame that it buried Winnie the Pooh, but it's not necessarily, it's not Potter's fault that Disney was like, yeah, let's throw it under the bus. All right, so Dragon, let's let's get into your 95. Go ahead. Dragon, 95. Hello? Dragon, 95. Okay, I don't know. I will get into my 95 then, I guess. Sorry, folks. My number 95 is 21 Jump Street. 21 Jump Street, of course, being the reboot of the TV series, which I've never seen a single episode of, starring Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. And, man, this, honestly, with both Jump Street movies, I kind of feel like they're sort of interchangeable with each other. With 21 Jump Street. Oh, hold on. Dragon is second. Technical issue all kicked up. Okay. Dragon will be back in just a minute, folks. Sorry about that. Donovan, How to Train Your Dragon 2 is definitely on my list, but it's not going to be in this installment. It's higher up for sure. Okay, so 21 Jump Street, not much to say about it. I think the original 21 Jump Street movie kind of set the tone with the comedy and the meta quality of everything. It was very much sort of, I feel like, a predecessor to the Lego movie of all things, which is weird, but really it's one of those things where when I first heard they were doing a 21 Jump Street movie starring Channing Tatum, I honestly, it was probably one of my least anticipated movies of the year it came out, which is 2012. It came out in 2012. So, when I heard that they were doing a Jump Street movie, I was rolling my eyes big time. But this proved that Lord and Miller, they are the kings of taking ridiculous IPs and doing anything with them and making them entertaining and making them meta. And man, I gotta tell you, when everyone else was scratching their heads about the Lego movie, which we'll get to way further on down the list, I was like, yes, Lord and Miller doing the Lego movie? Like, Lord and Miller kicked ass doing 21 Jump Street, which is something that I had never had any interest in, and that movie was great. Imagine a franchise that I'm actually into, which is Lego. So yeah, definitely set the stage. And 22 Jump Street didn't quite make the list for me, but I will say that I love the meta commentary that 22 Jump Street plays with in terms of the sequelitis. And I think that 22 Jump Street is probably like the Wayne's World 2 of the 2010s.
And I'm a big fan of Wayne's World 2. I love how Wayne's World 2 shakes out as far as the the fourth wall breaks and calling out the sequelitis of it all. So yeah, 22 Jump Street, honestly, arguably even more clever than the first 21 Jump Street. But I got to give the edge to the first movie just because it set the stage and from a historical point of view, really gave us our first big taste of what Lord and Miller were all about. All right. I guess I should also switch over to my collage and not Dragon's collage. My bad. Sorry about that, folks. My number 94. This is going to be controversial that it's coming in so low, and I'm sorry. I love this movie. It's just honestly, like when ranking it out, what can I say? This decade had a lot of great movies, and this is one of the great movies of the decade, but it is ranked a little bit low here. But I'm going to go with Wreck-It Ralph. The original Wreck-It Ralph is my 94. And honestly, I feel like I'm going to have to kind of like defend why it's so low. And honestly, like I said, I don't really know. I do think it is one of the best Disney movies of the decade as far as original Disney animated movies go. I do think that it has a lot of good qualities to it. I got to admit, it is one of those things where it's not quite the Lego movie of video games like I was hoping it would be. But it's got a really lovable story underneath it all, and it's got a really great kind of, it's got a really great message to it. I love the two main characters, Ralph and Vanellope. I think their dynamic is honestly one of the best dynamic duos of any Pixar movie. And it's a great movie. It's a great lesson, great moral. I will say though, I do think the movie was a little bit misadvertised, just because all the video game references are kind of out of the movie within the first 15 minutes, and they hung a lot of the advertising on that. And B, I do kind of wish we would have seen a little bit more roll jumping than we ended up getting. I remember the first time I saw this movie being sort of disappointed by the fact that it's like, okay, we go into Hero's Duty and then we go into Sugar Rush and we spend the rest of the movie in Sugar Rush. And why don't you just call the movie Sugar Rush? I will say I've softened on that stance quite a bit over the years, just because I do think the Vanellope and Ralph stuff is still strong. But I do wish that it was a little bit more of an adventure than it ends up being. Claude, what about Wreck-It Ralph 2? Claude, I am definitely someone who defends the heck out of Wreck-It Ralph 2. I will say I don't think any of the meme jokes age well at all in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Like, honestly, even a year in, I think some of the, especially the montage of getting the views and the money on the YouTube thing, like the Ralph memes, that is, maybe one of the cringiest scenes in any Disney movie this decade. But I will say that the main storyline of Wreck-It Ralph 2, the Ralph and Vanellope kind of growing apart from each other, I will say that storyline is beautiful. It's relatable. I have been there, and I love it. Didn't quite make my list because, like I said, that Wreck-It Ralph 2 with the internet stuff does have some cringe factor to it, to be sure. But it is an emotional ride. All right, folks, I'm going to check my email, see if Dragon has sent me anything. So really quick, let me look here. No, not yet. I don't quite know what to do with Dragon. He says he'll catch up. So, all right, I trust him. I guess this will make it go a little bit faster. Okay, so let's see. What number are we on? We're on number 93. Let me check my document here. 93. All right. Number 93 is Ted. Now with Ted, this is honestly, Ted kind of makes me sad because it showed a lot of promise for Seth MacFarlane as a live action director. And oh boy, between Ted 2 and Once Upon a Time in the West, or A Million Ways to Die in the West, I should say, I'm sorry, Seth. I love you, but you kind of threw away all that potential, honestly. Kind of sullied your name with those two movies. But the original Ted is awesome, man. It really is. It's honestly one of the most high concept comedies of the decade. It's super rewatchable. You know, I don't really care that the Ted voice is basically just Peter Griffin, because I just think it's pretty uncanny to hear the Peter Griffin voice coming out of the teddy bear. And of course, I'm getting hiccups when I'm solo. That's great. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All right. I'm sure Dragon will have more to say about Ted. I know that Ted is on his list as well in this bracket, so I'll kind of leave that to him. All right. Let's see. My number 92. Let me switch to the banner here. All right. 92 for me is going to be The Kids Are All Right from 2010. Don't have a ton to say about this movie, but it is, honestly, this is kind of like, this is sort of like a perfect Venn diagram of a movie. And yes, Claude, yes, I did hear that Seth MacFarlane is moving over from Fox, and he's moving to NBC. And honestly, Claude, like, I sort of wish that Seth MacFarlane would go to like Netflix or something, but NBC could be an interesting fit for Seth. It could be. It could be. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ted is a Universal Studios movie, right? So there is some working relationship there between Seth and Universal with NBC. So that makes sense. All right. Anyways. So yeah, 92. My number 92. I literally just said it. I'm sorry, folks. The Kids Are All Right. So this is a good Venn diagram of a movie that I really personally enjoy, and a movie that's culturally very important. This was honestly one of the first very, very openly LGBT comedies of the decade that was really well embraced. Like, critics and audiences really loved it. It was nominated for Best Picture. And to tell you the truth, I think it's a super watchable, super likable movie. I think that the kids and Mia, oh God, Donovan, you know how to pronounce it. It's the actress who played Alice in the live action Alice in Wonderland, Mia Wasikowska or something like that, and then Josh Hutcherson. I think the kids are both really likable in this movie. And then, of course, you have the lesbian mothers being Annette Bening and Julianne Moore. The plot is that Julianne Moore is having an affair with Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo is honestly super duper likable in this movie as well. This is one of the first times that I remember seeing Ruffalo in a film. So hold on, folks. Let me check in something with Dragon really quick. Nope, still nothing from Dragon. Sorry, folks. Hope I'm not boring you guys too much with my solo commentary here. But yeah, Kids Are All Right. Like I said, it's super likable. All the characters are really likable. And it's relatable. I think it's awesome that it's an LGBT movie that's handled in such a down-to-earth way, and that it was so accepted by both critics and audiences, and it sort of set the stage for that kind of stuff going forward into the decade to come. All right, number 91 here. Number 91. What do I got? I don't even remember my own list. I have it written down here. All right. Oh, boy. Okay. Number 91. This is the first MCU movie on the list, and I do love it dearly, and for a long time, it was my favorite MCU movie, and to this day, I do think it's pretty damn underrated. Yes, I agree that the third act is a little messy, but honestly, everything that came before it is so good that I really don't care. Well, if it isn't the Star-Spangled Man with a plan. So what's your plan for the day? Yeah, talking about Captain America, the first Avenger, which in my humble opinion might be a perfect old school Captain America movie. I think that Winter Soldier is probably a perfect Captain America movie as far as just the sheer rundown of everything. But But I feel like in terms of doing a World War II era Captain America movie, this is perfect. It really is. I mean, yeah, it's a little montage heavy, but I feel like Chris Evans just right out of the gate completely nails the character, completely nails the tone. I like the effect isn't like mind-blowingly good. I don't think it holds up all that well, but I do love the idea of the the shrimpy Chris Evans character. The shrimpy Chris Evans, and then morphed into the buff Chris Evans. Yeah, Donovan, I agree that Winter Soldier is in a different league. I agree with you, but like I said, I know the character more for the World War II era stuff than I know him for the modern stuff. So I've never read the the Winter Soldier storyline or any modern cap for that matter, and I am very familiar with like old school Captain America. My dad was one of those kids with the garbage can, the garbage can lid running around using it as a shield. He was one of those kids back in the day. So I mean, I respect the hell out of this movie just for giving my dad a great Captain America movie in the Captain America style. My dad really likes the new Captain America movies, but this will always be his favorite one because this is a Captain America that he grew up with. So for that reason, it will always be my personal favorite Captain America movie. With that being said, Donovan, I mean, trust me, like Winter Soldier, I'm sure it's in Dragon's top 20. All right, checking on Dragon really quick here, folks. Okay, to tell you the truth, folks, honestly, what we might end up doing is we might end up just doing a separate podcast doing Dragon's picks because I don't know what's going on with them. But regardless, we're halfway through my list. So we're gonna chug forward here, and I will go ahead and I wish I had someone to bounce off of with, but you know what, folks? Hold on. Going to ask Sandy if he's like randomly available. It'd be nice to have someone to bounce off of here as I go through my list, at least, just so I'm not talking to myself. Anyways, my number 90 is Crazy Stupid Love. I love this movie. I really do. This movie is honestly a big hidden gem of the decade for me. This has got an all-star cast. It's got Steve Carell. It's got Ryan Gosling. It's got Emma Stone. I mean, those three right there. I do love how this is very much an ensemble movie. I love the stuff with the kid. I love the stuff with Steve Carell. It's like all the stuff really comes together. Where Ryan Gosling is sort of like the hitch to Steve Carell, the love coach, if you will. But lo and behold, Ryan Gosling is also dating Steve Carell's daughter. Shenanigans ensue. But what I love about this movie is that it's very much it's down to earth. It's a romantic comedy, but it's dealt with in a really realistic way. It makes you really feel for the characters first and foremost. A lot of romantic characters a lot of romantic comedies are very, very sexualized. And honestly, this isn't really sexualized. So that's okay, hold on. Sorry, folks. I'm just gonna see if Ezra can come on. Sorry. I don't mean to keep you waiting here. I'm just trying to get glossy. Can have a little bit more of a, but yeah, love commoners. Anyone seen Crazy Stupid Love? I know it's not really a genre movie at all, obviously, but I do think that it is a very it's a very fun movie in its own right. Yeah. Okay, I'm about to get Sandy on here. Meanwhile, we will get to my number 89, and this is a fun one. This is a fun one because this is very much a personal choice movie, folks. This is not a great movie in the slightest, but it is a movie that I really love, and that is 2013 Bowles Lerman's The Great Gatsby. Da, 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 da. Yeah. Bowles Lerman's The Great Gatsby. Okay, hold on. Okay, Ezra's going to come on. Bowles Lerman's The Great Gatsby. What I love about Bowles Lerman's The Great Gatsby, I love a couple things about it. One, it is audacious as fuck. I mean, it really is. This is an audacious remake, man. It is a bold retelling of the book. But it's also a retelling of the book that is very close to the book at the same time. It is very close to the text. The bold thing about it is the style. The bold thing about it is the soundtrack, the text, the actual editing and everything like that. And of course, you've got Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously, who's kind of a stepping stone away from his Wolf of Wall Street performance, which I think is going to be his defining performance of the 2010s. As much as I love him and stuff like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Okay.
Good. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing good, Sandy. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, so basically, a decade. We're doing it in 5 parts, but Dragon just kind of randomly dropped out around number 95. So we're going to number 81 here, and I'm just going to run down my list, and I don't know what's up with Dragon. He might join us later. I don't know, but what I'm expecting to do is just to get to number 81, sign off, and then what we'll do is Dragon and I will probably just do another quick podcast later on down the road where we'll go through his number 95 through 81. But Sandy, I'm going to throw it to you because obviously you're a big film fan. You went to film school for a lot of the decade. What were some of your favorite films of the decade? I know, big question, right?
It is a big question. Mainly because I don't go to the movies a whole lot. I just don't go to the theater a whole lot. And
you spent a lot of this decade watching, catching up on classic cinema.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, and that sounds bad. But I see Rango up here. I see a lot. So I'm seeing a lot of his. So it's not exactly the past 5 years. This is going back good 10 years. I would say I think Rango is a really great example of new advancements in animation. I really appreciate that film for what it's done because what they did was they filmed everything on a live set with Johnny Depp and crew, and then they took it to animation and used facial expressions and movements. So if you look at the animation in the movie, it looks a little bit quirky, and of course the story itself is the entire look of the film is very, very stylized. I remember seeing that movie. I think I've seen it a few times, at least twice, and just thinking of how because it's original story, which is terrific, and just how stylized it is, how almost kind of Wes Anderson the opening is.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
and then it transforms into this really gritty Western type of theme. And boy, the characters, I love the designs on those characters. I'd say that's probably one of my favorite animated films of the decade. As with Despicable Me, because when people think of Despicable Me, they think, oh, the Minions, how over the course of the decade, the entire franchise just came really bloated. And
I like Despicable Me 3 for Trey Parker.
okay, all right. I'm sorry to say I'm not there with you. I didn't enjoy the movie. I saw it in the theater and I fell asleep because I couldn't stay invested in it.
I don't think anything in the movie works besides Trey Parker, but I think Trey Parker is delightful.
Well, the first one, I really, looking back on it, I really have some appreciation for it because that was not the original idea. And we don't get a whole lot of movies, or I guess animated movies, about villains.
Mm-hmm.
So that was refreshing because that's something I thought about over the past, a few months ago. I thought about, a really good animated movie with a villain protagonist.
Megamind too.
Megamind, yeah. I think Despicable Me did it better though. I think I personally think Despicable Me, and not only because it's has a little more it's from another studio that we're not really familiar with, or it was the time. Megamind has that generic DreamWorks look to it, It looks a lot like Monsters versus Aliens, stuff like that.
I hear you. I've personally never been big on Megamind, but I know that Megamind has a big fan base out there. So
no, I liked Megamind. I've always liked Megamind. I think
I like it too. I'm just I'm not one of those people that thinks it's one of DreamWorks' best movies, and a lot of people do think it's one of DreamWorks' best movies. So.
Okay, well, I can understand that. Yeah.
All right. Anyways, sorry, go ahead. Do you have any others? I'm just kind of trying to get this done in a time crunch here. So.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, you haven't seen the Leonardo DiCaprio Great Gatsby, have you?
Unfortunately, no.
Have you read the book?
I have not. No, I'm not a big reader.
Okay, I'm not a big reader. All right. Well, it is my favorite book of all time, or one of them. One of my favorite novels. Yes, I know that's cliche to say, but the novel kind of swept me away back in high school, and I've never really looked back. I love the story. And I think the movie adapts the novel in a very audacious way stylistically within the soundtrack and the editing choices and everything, while still being very faithful to the written word, while still being very accurate to the book. And I think Leonardo DiCaprio as Jay Gatsby is one of the best pieces of casting of the decade, honestly. I think he just fits that role like a glove. All right, so Sandy, I know you probably haven't seen a lot of the movies I'm going to be talking about, but my God, I'm just desperate to have someone to bounce off of here. So,
okay.
Hopefully we can have some sort of conversation here. All right, because I get really nervous when I talk to myself here. Sandy, what do you think of the Minions movie? Claude Coringa is asking about that.
I saw that. I didn't see it in the theater. Where did I see that? I don't know. I'm not sure what the circumstances were when I saw it. What year was that? 2015?
I think 2015. Yeah, okay, sounds about right.
It's been a while. It only makes sense that the movie exists. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's perfectly fine. I think at that point, the Minions already kind of got to a point where it's very obvious that Universal was just trying to make as much money off them as they possibly could.
All right.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing.
Okay, my number 88, Sandy. My number 88 is going to be the what year was this? It was 2013. The Coen Brothers movie starring Oscar Isaac, Inside Llewellyn Davis.
Okay.
Now this is a movie about a Bob Dylan-esque folk singer who's got a huge ego about him, who kind of goes on a humbling journey It's honestly my favorite Coen Brothers movie of the decade, and also this to me was the movie that sort of introduced Oscar Isaac. Like, this was the big sort of like, okay, like, this Oscar Isaac guy has a lot of potential. I'm interested to see where he goes from here. This movie's also got a lot of killer original music. I honestly like it a little bit better than Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which is a very comparable Coen Brothers movie to me, because both movies are sort of like road movies that, you know, have a very like folksy vibe to them. But I like how this movie is sort of it's a film that almost like challenges you to like the main character, because like I said, the main character is sort of like very ego driven and pathetic, but at the same time, he's relatable. You know, he's sort of like, we all have that kind of like pathetic, like super ego in us. And this film kind of like puts a magnifying glass up to someone who's like very unself-aware about that ego that he has. So I mean, I do think the film meanders a little bit. That's why it's not like, you know, the upper echelon of my list. But I think it is a very good Coen Brothers movie, and it is an excellent Oscar Isaac performance.
That's the one right in the middle of the title card, right?
What?
That's the one right in the middle of the thumbnail here?
Yes, with the cat. Yeah.
And what's the name of it again?
Inside Llewellyn Davis.
Okay. You'll have to link me to that.
Yeah. Right. Number 87. Number 87, we have... we have the original John Wick from 2014.
Okay.
Now, Sandy, this is honestly on my list for cultural reasons.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm not a big action movie guy. I'm really not. When a movie is like primarily action, like primarily like, all right, stunts and gunplay and fight choreography, all that stuff is really impressive to me from a technical point of view, sure. But to me, it almost kind of like, it almost kind of like is a sort of like, you know, sensory overload, where it's like, you know, I don't know. I'm not a huge action guy, but I gotta give John Wick respect, just because I do think John Wick is the definitive action franchise of the decade. And while I do think that in terms of stunts and fight choreography and everything, the movies just got better and better, I do think that the original John Wick is the best movie, just because it has by far the most relatable premise with the, you know, like, they killed John Wick's dog. You don't just kill John Wick's dog, you know? And that in itself kind of became like a legendary movie premise. And of course, this movie very much birthed the rebrand of Keanu Reeves in the decade, and Keanu Reeves sort of like became one of the most popular people of the decade because of this movie.
Yeah.
So I don't go back and I don't go back and watch this movie all that much. I've seen it a couple times, but I had to give at least one John Wick movie a place on my list, just because of the big impact it's had. Like, overall, it's not my kind of movie. It's a very like manly man sort of movie, and I am not a manly man by any stretch. But I do think it deserves a spot on any top 100 list for the decade, just because of the impact it had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, all right. Getting there, Sandy. Almost done here. Number 86. My number 86 is Room. Not The Room, Sandy, but Room. The 2015 movie starring Brie Larson, where she is she's playing a woman with her very young child who's incapacity in a one-room building. She lives there with her child for, I want to say, like about 2 years. And then they break out, and the movie is all about what it's like post-capacity, what it's like, you know, post being kidnapped, the sort of mental ramifications that you go through, and the struggles to readapt into society. Sandy, this movie, it's a very impactful movie. It's a movie that definitely like leaves an impression on you.
Yeah.
That being said, it's a movie I'll never watch again, because it's not exactly a fun movie, and it's not a rewatchable movie, and you know, it's kind of depressing. I will like it ends on an uplifting note by the end of things, but for a lot of it, it's pretty aggressively depressing.
Yeah, it looks pretty depressing.
But I mean, it's worth watching. It's worth watching just because I do think it's very much a great, like, if this was like a 2-act play, you know how plays are kind of like usually structured with like an act break in the middle. So if this was like a 2-act play, you know, you got the first act being the actual room itself, you know, which is the, you know, where they're incapacity being kidnapped. And then they break out at the end. And then you got that second act. And honestly, I think the second act is even more impactful. The post-kidnapping stuff, because it's so realistic. So, I mean, mix that all together and you've got a hell of a movie. But like I said, the reason it's not further up on my list is just because it's really not the most rewatchable thing in the world, because it's kind of like aggressively depressing. All right. DuckTales actually had an actor appear as an actor from John Wick appearing as a character in season 2. That's cool. That's cool. All right. Okay, getting there, Sandy. My number 85. My number 85 is going to be Drive from 2011.
Okay.
This is the Ryan Gosling movie where it's just very, very drenched in neon and drenched in 80s like neo-noir. He's driving around in a car for a lot of the movie. It's very atmospheric. He doesn't really say a whole lot. Bryan Cranston is the main villain. Honestly, Dragon, much like John Wick, this movie's pretty much just on the list because it's a very, very popular, culturally relevant movie. And I do think that Ryan Gosling is one of the top actors of the decade. I think Ryan Gosling just had a banner decade in terms of like output, you know, from La La Land to Blade Runner 2049, whole bunch of other stuff. So I did want to give this movie some props. I do think it's more memorable to me. Like, I don't know, it's interesting because John Wick is definitely like a more fast-paced movie with a more relatable protagonist. But this one, it's way more slow-paced. It's way more kind of like deliberate. But at the same time, I mean, it soaks you in that atmosphere. It's a super atmospheric movie. It's just it's drenched in that kind of like 80s sort of like neon glow, and that's what I remember the most about it. I don't necessarily think that Ryan Gosling's character is like all that deep or anything. His name is literally Driver. So it is very much kind of like a man with no name sort of scenario. Oh, Lance Reddick is Linares. Yes. Thank you, Claude. I forget that Lance Reddick is from John Wick. Okay. And here's a man that I wasn't expecting to see for the rest of the podcast. How you doing, Dragon?
Oh my goodness, I am so sorry.
It's fine. Dragon, honestly, like as you can see, we're at my 85, and honestly, I can crack out the rest of my list in like another 5 to 10 minutes if you want to just do your list in another podcast, or what do you want to do here?
Well, I mean, I figure I'll play catch up, so we don't have to. I'll just play I'll play speed round catch up. That's all.
Okay, well, I tell you what, Dragon, do you want me to go through the rest of my list just so we're not switching back and forth?
If you want to do that for simplicity's sake, sure.
Okay, because I'm already...
I'll step out so I don't clutter the scene, all right?
All right, thanks, Sandy. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Bye, Dragon.
Bye.
Sorry, Dragon. I had Sandy on just because I kind of got a little stage fright doing it by myself, so I wanted to have someone to bounce off of with me. But okay, so anyways, Dragon, would you like me to recap my list for you?
Yeah, sure. Just give me fire off the names.
Okay. Remind me, what number did you leave out on?
I didn't get to do number 95, so basically 95 up.
Okay, so my number 95 was 21 Jump Street. My number 94 was Wreck-It Ralph. Number 93 was Ted. Number 92 was The Kids Are All Right. Number 91, Captain America, The First Avenger. Number 90, Crazy Stupid Love. Number 89, the Leonardo DiCaprio Great Gatsby. Number 88, Inside Llewellyn Davis. Number 87, the original John Wick from 2014. Number 86, Room. And number 85, Drive. So that's where I'm at. All right, I'll wrap these next few up super quick, Dragon. So let's get into my number 84. And Dragon, it's appropriate. Like I feel like you came back here for a reason, because number 84 is The Conjuring 2.
Ah, my Formiga sense was.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Dragon, here's the thing with The Conjuring 2. I do think that The Conjuring is one of the most important horror movies of the decade in terms of just like, it was one of the first prestige horror movies of the decade, and it set the groundwork for a lot of bigger things to come. The Conjuring 2, I would say, is arguably even scarier than the original Conjuring. There are certain set pieces in The Conjuring 2 that still just like really, really give me the creeps. However, I do think the thing that kind of sets The Conjuring 2 back and definitively makes the original Conjuring a better movie is I am not a big fan of the way that The Nun is kind of shoehorned into this movie. The Nun has nothing to do with the actual ghost story that they're adapting, and it's obviously just kind of like sequel bait and kind of like spin-off bait. But, you know, Vera Farmiga, she does do a great job, and I do think there's a lot more for her to do in this movie than there is in the first movie. She very much is kind of like a centerpiece of this movie. She's very much kind of one of the main people being threatened by the actual spirit in this one. So I do think it's a little bit scarier than the original Conjuring, but by the same point, I do think that the stuff with the nun makes it a messier movie overall, but still, I do think that this is very much one of James Wan's best directed movies. All right, number 83. Number 83 is going to be Iron Man 3, Dragon.
Oh, God, I'm glad you went with the synergistic approach.
You're right. All right, Iron Man 3, Dragon, as you know, this was one of my favorite this was my favorite MCU movie for a while, at least until Guardians of the Galaxy. And man, I love this movie for a lot of reasons. I think that I honestly, like, up until this recent like resurgence of, like, you know, I would say maybe up until Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, honestly, no. This is probably even more auteur than Thor Ragnarok was, because Thor Ragnarok was a great movie, but it was pretty by the numbers for MCU. This movie, I would say this movie is very much the biggest sort of like Marvel giving the keys to a director and the director just letting loose with his style. And this is one of my favorite Shane Black movies. It's not, you know, it's not up there with like something like The Nice Guys, but I do love it though. And I love the fact that it is so definitively a Shane Black movie. Like, I would say this is way more a Shane Black movie than it is an MCU movie. And I love it for that, honestly. I know a lot of people have issues with this movie because of that factor, but it's kind of like the Last Jedi of the MCU, where I respect the hell out of this movie specifically for doing stuff that broke the formula. You know, a lot of people have problems with the Mandarin twist, but I loved the Mandarin twist. I didn't see it coming at all. I think it's hilarious. And I think we're definitely building to the Mandarin being involved in the MCU anyways. It just took a while. So, you know, just overall, it's a fantastic MCU movie. Of course, we get to see a lot of Tony Stark outside of the suit and a lot of different combinations of like, okay, what if in this scene he only just has one Iron Man arm? And, you know, I love that sort of like mixing and matching of the different Iron. Can you hear me?
Yeah, well, now I can. I think you cut out on that last part, Tiki, after the Mandarin twist.
God damn it! What you know what? Whatever. Technical difficulties here. Sorry. Okay. All right, number 82 is The Witch. I'm not going to have much to say about this one because, Dragon, I know you don't really, you're not a horror movie guy, but I will say that this is Robert Eggers' very much a very gritty historical piece, very gritty, like kind of like 1800s. You feel the grit and the grime and the dirt on the ground, and you feel the language being used. But this is just the predecessor to The Lighthouse. This is just like a warm-up round to The Lighthouse. But it is an important sort of entry into the horror movie canon of the 2010s. So I do think it deserves a spot on the list. And finally, number 81 is Moonlight. Moonlight is a movie I've only seen once, so I kind of just put it on the list for historical reasons. It is very much a kind of a time capsule of where we are in the decade in terms of his, I don't know. I don't really even know how to talk about Moonlight, to tell you the truth, because I just had to put it on the list. This is honestly probably the movie where, out of everything on the list, this is the movie where I felt the most peer pressure of like, I gotta have Moonlight on there somewhere, man. I don't know. But I mean, it's an important. I don't know, Dre, and I feel like I'm not being very genuine with the favorites thing here, because to me, what I like about Moonlight is also the thing that I don't like about Moonlight, which is the 3-act structure. It's a bold, original idea. I just don't necessarily think it works as well as. It doesn't work as well for me as it does for other people, and I know that. Granted, keep in mind. I do think it belongs on the list. I'm not over the moon about it. And other people have it like way higher. There's a lot of people that have it in their top 10 of the decade. I don't see that at all. But, I got to give it props. Mahershala Ali is great in the movie, of course. And it does have an interesting framework to it. And it does have an interesting structure to it. I hate to say it, it's not the most relatable thing in the world to me, but obviously it's not made for me. I feel like, as a straight white male, I am obviously not the target demographic for this movie, so I don't know what to tell you. Not the strongest way to end out on this list, but, God, now I feel super wishy-washy. I'm sorry. All right.
So I'm gonna go through mine. I'm sorry, is that your 81?
Yeah, that's my 81.
Just want to make sure I wasn't crazy. Sorry, folks, a little kerfuffled, as you could probably imagine. Okay, number 95, The Intern from 2015. So I keep telling you about The Intern. The Intern, this is the feel-good Nancy Meyer film, my friends. This is Pleasantries the movie, in other words. It's Pleasantries the movie. It's the most likable De Niro performance you're going to come across. It's all about the optimism of wisdom and enriching the lives of your coworkers. As the intern, which De Niro is in this film, it's literally what an intern does. Kind of put it against what De Niro's doing in the movie here, where his job and what he does in the movie is to make everyone's life better and easier, in a sense. So he kind of does that through the course of the movie, as appropriate as it sounds. The point is it's a really nice film. He and Anne Hathaway are really good in the film. It's just that's the best way I can sum it. Pleasantries the movie. I'd highly recommend it. I know it's a little low on the list here, folks. I mean, it's not really lighting the world on fire. It's not like it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's like the most comforting movie you're ever going to see.
Yeah.
All right, number 94. Pee-wee's Big Holiday from 2015.
Oh man, I'm glad you put this on your list, Dragon. I was just reminiscing about some of this movie. It is delightful. It really is.
Of course, this is Pee Wee Herman at his. For me, Pee Wee Herman's at his best when he's at feature length. To me, that's when he's at his.
I agree.
And this in many ways, this was kind of the redemption. Within this decade, we had kind of the redemptive performance of Paul Rubens, as well as his guest spot on Gotham as Mr. Cobblepot. it was. I think he really he was so good. I mean, around this point, around this year, I think in the same year he did this and he did The Spot on Gotham, if I'm remembering correctly. Regardless,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was in season 2 they had that whole story. Anyway, so
And he also got to come back and play Rex.
Oh my God! Yeah, you're right. There's that too. That's what I'm saying. It was a banner decade and a banner year in 2015 for Paul Rubens. So this movie, it had magic. It kind of had the original de-aging effect. If you really want to look at it, I mean, even going back before. Again, this is the same year as Ant-Man.
You're right. Yeah.
Same year as Ant-Man, which is kind of, I believe, the first MCU film that actually had the de-aging effect. It was a subtle version of, because it was a practical mix with a little bit of a digital. It did some digital erasing. It basically used strings. It was kind of a practical version of the de-aging effect. So they had like strings and like a wig or something that kind of helped pull things back a little bit. And I think they digitally kind of like slightly. It was a light digital de-aging, mind you. Point being, this movie, it was so on the mind. The best thing I can say with the film, Joe Manganiello stole the show of this movie. Joe Manganiello is what really makes this
he
movie.
absolutely did.
The chemistry he has with Paul Rubens, you can tell Joe Manganiello loved working with Paul Rubens, and like the friendship they cultivate is wonderful. This film is chock full of joyous absurdity, and it has a pure heart that you gotta love. It's basically the best shorthand of it. It's like SpongeBob the movie. It's like the SpongeBob SquarePants movie meets Pee Wee Herman. That's what this movie is. It's a travelogue. It's a lot of fun. It hinges on a friendship, and just those fantasy segments of Joe Manganiello. Oh, don't get me started, folks. On Netflix. That's what I crack. I will just check out those scenes there, like it's perfecto. It's adorable, just like them celebrating this fantasy birthday. It's like Pee Wee Herman's trying to go to Joe Manganiello's birthday party. That's the plot of the movie. It's wonderful. Okay,
all right.
Number 93, Blackfish from 2013.
Ah, yes.
So Blackfish, this is a very effective and very well structured documentary. It's I'm not like what you would call an environmentalist or one for the whale causes ordinarily, but I was so sucked in by how this story was conveyed. I really was. I mean, the thing that really hooked me true, and the reason I would go back to the movie just for like one moment in the movie, I'll feel chills every time I watch the movie, is the origin of Tilikum the whale. The origin was so striking in that Jeff Beal score, and it's that moment where you have like the fisherman, the whale hunt, the ex-whale hunter, who was very remorseful, saying, "And I just wish I never hunted that whale." And then we dun, 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 then we see Tilikum the whale as a young whale being brought from point A to point B, and it's like, and there's like such an ambiance of like, oh God, something bad's surrounding this character, as we know from the framing device of the movie. It's like that moment of, oh God, trouble is on its way, and there's a menace built into this character, and it's a fascinating story. So of course there's some arbitration over the manipulation of facts many people have brought up. That's why it's kind of why it's not a higher on the list, but at the end of the day, folks, I will make the point that the indisputable facts that are there do stand for themselves, and like it or not, manipulate or not, it's a very compelling work. You can't refute that. It is absolutely a compelling thing. Manipulate or no, it's a well-made documentary. Okay.
I will say that SeaWorld has very much bounced back because they've been putting much more emphasis on being like a coaster park. And honestly, Dragon, like the 3 SeaWorld parks throughout the decade, they ever since Blackfish came out, they've really been putting groundwork into becoming great coaster destination parks in their own right. So I will be going to my first SeaWorld park in just about roughly 7 weeks now. I'll be going to SeaWorld Orlando to experience, some great coasters. So I'm really looking forward to that. Anyways.
Okay, number 92. Well, I'm flying blind in the comments here, by the way, so if you can.
Nothing in the comments right now, but yeah, I'm keeping an eye out.
Good man. Okay, number 92 for me, Brigsby Bear from 2017.
Yeah, this is. I'm sorry, I never got around to this one.
Okay, so Brigsby Bear. This is a great indie movie with a genius premise, and especially with the Act 1 twist, which I will not spoil for you. There's a really big twist at the start of the movie in Act 1 that really it really shapes where it's going. It's like it's an ingenious twist, and essentially what I can say about it is Kyle Mooney, he's the protagonist. He's great. He's this damaged character. He's not your traditional leading man, which is kind of refreshing. So he's kind of this damaged character who's kind of looking for his place and defining the lines of reality. as the film goes on. He's kind of, something happens to him, and he's trying to find his way back from that. And has a talented ensemble. You have Greg Kinnear, you have Matt Walsh from Veep fame. Of course, the big reason you need to check out this movie, anyone needs to check out this movie, this is one of Mark Hamill's finest performances. He's only in the movie for about 3 or so scenes, technically. But seriously, I mean, like, it's on the level. Anyone who really loved Mark Hamill's scenes, or like the big crescendo of Mark Hamill's performance in The Last Jedi, this to me was of the same year that came out. This is the one that stole the Mark Hamill performance for me. And the one scene that he has towards the end of the film, it's like, it got me so much. It's like one of those beautiful scenes I've ever seen him play.
All right.
Okay, number 91. The Death of Superman Lives. What happened?
I'm so glad you have this on your list, my friend.
This is from 2015. Of course, this was John Schnepp's passion project. The dearly missed John Schnepp. I funded the. I don't want to say, oh, I helped fund this thing. I was a Kickstarter, so like I had a drop in the bucket on this one. This expands on the very infamous Superman Lives story that Kevin Smith told everybody.
Which is great, because basically what this is it's like a famous Kevin Smith story. Like, imagine, and there's a capacity, Dragon. Oh my God! Like, we've talked about this before, but we could get a Kevin Smith Prince documentary. The footage is there to make it.
I mean, I hear it's in the hands of Ava DuVernay, so we'll see where that goes.
Oh my God! Oh fuck yes! Oh, anyways, that's yes. Anyways,
so essentially, this is kind of one of those anatomy of a failure pieces. This is kind of less failure, more like an examination of a project that never worked.
Now I want to see a cop-out documentary. Hey, Kevin, get your Bruce Willis chicken.
Oh God. Anyway, so of course, basically, what's really great about this is that we have the 3 acts, basically the 3 act structure. This is the 3 drafts of the script, like the 3 main drafts of the script. As Kevin Smith kind of starts off things as he kind of frames his story in the first place. We get to the Tim Burton section of things in the middle. And then, of course, we get to kind of the where things break down by the third, where we have kind of like Dan Gilroy, of course, went on the Nightcrawler fame. So, of course, we have Kevin Smith, Tim Burton, John Peters. John Peters, of course, being the biggest get of the whole thing, kind of the crazy, unreliable narrator of
the Jeffrey Katzenberg of the documentary.
The Jeffrey Katzenberg of the documentary. If Jeffrey Katzenberg was a little bit more off the rails, yes, that'd be John Peters. It's a great unknown story that had its was. It's a great unknown story to tell. It amazingly sells you on, basically the big premise of movies, it sells you on the joke Superman movie, the movie that literally Bryan Singer held up. We're not doing this movie. The people wanted to make this silly thing. Nick Cage Superman, using a very infamous picture. And basically John Schnepp, he says, would it have been that bad? It's a fascinating documentary. I love it. Okay.
And it's just a testament to the legacy of Schnepp as well, and I'm so glad it exists for that reason.
I really wish he would have been able to make that next movie he was going to do, the Attack of the Shwedish thing. It was
I hear you.
But again, Kevin Smith might be doing that documentary series for Schnepp, so we'll see if that ever sees the light of day. All right, number 90, Chef from 2014.
Oh, all right. I'm glad you have this one on your list too. As a big foodie, like, I wanted to put this on my list. I really did. I didn't quite have room for it, but
2014 is a jam-packed year by year. Right?
It is exactly. That's the thing.
So this is really intimate Jon Favreau film that parallels filmmaking with food and food basically cooking.
It's just weird to think that the guy who directed this movie also directed The Lion King.
It is. So to me, especially post the Lion King world, I think when we see like true blue Jon Favreau movies, Jon Favreau's strength is doing a straightforward character focused piece, as we've seen with The Mandalorian. And Mandalorian as another example.
Yeah, totally.
In terms of film, Iron Man, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like straightforward character piece, where it's kind of a 3-act character journey. And here we have, we see him as a father. We see him as kind of a chef, kind of finding himself on the road, with a food truck. He's literally on the road trying to find himself with a food truck with his son. And it's a simple story, but it's a nice story. It's got a great cast everyone's in this thing. Literally, Robert Downey Jr., Sofia Vergara.
Do not watch this movie on an empty stomach.
Yes, don't do that. The great John Leguizamo, he's in this too. It's definitely looking reflecting on the decade. This is the best Jon Favreau film, maybe second to the Jungle Book of his works
I
of the
think this
past
is
decade.
better than Jungle Book. No offense to Jungle
I'm
Book.
just saying, like these two of the, I can't say if I.
I think Jungle Book has some tonal problems. Honestly,
My point is this and Jungle Book are great, especially compared to The Lion King. That's my main point. Compare it to something
sure.
like that, not so much. But yes, Ranma is the best out of the decade. Okay, number 89, Year of the Batman. No.
How did I know you were going to make a Batman joke there?
Number 89, Rango from 2000.
All right. I already talked about this movie, so go ahead.
First, Rango. Of course, this is the Gore Verbinski's animated western. It's
I completely forgot it was a Gore Verbinski movie.
Yeah, so of course that's the irony. That's how we got Johnny Depp.
Right.
So this is, of course, we have an acting chameleon, literally an acting chameleon, adopting the role of a sheriff in a small western town. It's a lot of fun, just in premise. An acting chameleon. You can't make this stuff up, folks. There's these are the roles that Johnny Depp was made for. Like seriously, these are the roles that you want to see Johnny Depp play. Like these and the Ed Wood roles. Like these are the roles that really reflect well on who Johnny Depp is as an actor. The animation's superb. It's one of Nickelodeon's best. Absolutely, a buddy of mine, we really bonded over Rango in the first place. We used to lend each other movies, and Rango, if not the first, it was like the major one. The one he recommended to me that I had not seen. Like, oh God, Rango, is it that good? And watching is blown away by it. So of course, for me, Rango always boils down to Rango in his showdown with Rattlesnake Jake. Oh my God.
Rattlesnake Jake is a fucking great villain, and he is the best design in the movie.
Tipping the hat scene always, it's so fantastic. The one legend tipping his hat to another that's just freshly cultivated. Oh, I love it so much. And again, like it is an example of kind of the celebrity cast that reflects, of like how stars being cast in a western, again, actual true blue western. It's quite great. Ned Beatty's in this thing, man. Everyone's like a legit actor in this. It's so great.
Jeffrey Rush is Jake, right?
No. He's not. No, he's not Jake. It's if I remember correctly, Bill Nighy's Jake.
Bill Nighy. Yes, another Pirates of the Caribbean villain. I'm sorry.
Pretty sure. Right.
Well, you can see where I got the confusion from.
Of course. All right. Number 88.
The Year of the Rabbit.
Or the sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Ted. In 2012.
All right.
So of course, I adore Seth MacFarlane. I really do. I love him as a creator. Of course,
Fuck you, Thunder.
So of course, this is the basically. Now I will say within this decade, though, the decade of Family Guy notwithstanding, I love Seth MacFarlane because literally
Seth had very, very little to do with Family Guy.
I know, and that's the operative. That's the operative point. He came in, do the lines, and he's out of there. It's not really no creative process in that. Anything he's had a creative hand in, it's usually turned out to be something serviceable or really good. Again, Orville and Ted are probably the best things that he's done outside of like Family Guy in its golden era, let's call it.
Now, Dragon, you were gone when I talked about Ted, but one of the things that makes me sad about Ted is that I really feel like this movie showed a lot of potential with McFarlane as a live-action comedy director, and I don't know if Hollywood's going to give him another chance after Million Ways to Die in the West.
It's so funny you mentioned that because, again, while in the films, I don't know, but I know he's getting a lot of TV work. He signed a new contract for, like, new stuff.
For NBC, yeah, and that's interesting for sure.
That's the thing. I mean, if it's like the Orville, he's going to be in great shape because the Orville is the best thing he's done ever. Honestly,
nice.
He's a diehard Star Trek fan. So this is kind of like his dream come true. He's putting a lot of it hasn't dropped a beat, man. It's been good. All right, so let's see. All right, so Ted. So of course, it's neat to see the 7-4 style in live action. Of course, in this fun, really irreverent R-rated comedy. Mark Wahlberg. I wish he would just stick to comedies, man, because he's so good at the comedies. He really is.
He is.
And this is just proof of that. He has great chemistry with McFarland. That is the movie's relationship between Ted and John Bennett. It's got a great Norah Jones song in it, of course. The music, honestly, the orchestration, the theme of Walter Murphy's score, as well as Norah Jones. Everybody Needs a Best Friend song, still great.
It was great to see a Walter Murphy score on the big screen because he does have a very distinct style to him.
Absolutely. I'll admit some plot points. The reason this isn't higher, some plot points. Not that they're bad; they just don't hold up as well as I remember them. To like the whole like Joel McHale subplot. I was like, I mean, I love Joel McHale. Don't get me wrong.
Better than Ted 2.
I know, that's why I'm saying like, you're not going to see Ted 2 on my list being the point. So again, it's not a major knock. It's just like, yeah, maybe that's why it's not like in like the next.
Ted 2. Would you wager to say Ted 2 might be one of the most disappointing movies of the decade?
Oh come on, not of the. It's definitely it's a downgrade. Now here's a funny thing though. I keep mentioning this. So on the commentary of the first Ted, like they literally called like on the commentary, they literally said that it's going to be downhill from here, and they were right. At least they promised it up front. They said we're never going to do anything as great as Ted, and they were right.
Yeah, man, I'm still rooting for McFarlane to do live action movies, but I don't know.
I'd love to see it too, man. Let's hear the TV stuff because maybe the TV will bolster him. At least give him a Netflix movie or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 87. The People versus George Lucas from 2010.
Man, this is such a rewatchable documentary and also just very, very interesting because it's like 2010, People versus George Lucas. 2019, The Rise of Skywalker. Lots of shit goes down between this documentary and the end of the decade in terms of the fandom, Dragon. We need People versus George Lucas too.
So Alexandre O. Felipe, he directed this. He does really good documentary work too, by the way. He does Psycho documentaries really good as well. Anyway, so he basically made a documentary on the fans' response to Star Wars and kind of used it as an analysis of George Lucas, the man, and like why does the creator make his choices and make choices and alterations to his work that made him kind of in the godlike status, made him the creator in the first place. That's kind of the big question we're tackling in the documentary, almost presented as a legal case. Because again, we're hearing it from both sides, which is the really thing. I absolutely agree. It's super rewatchable. I rewatch this on the regular many a time.
Oh, I do too. It's honestly like on rotation for like things to fall asleep to.
Certainly, it's a clever. It really cleverly utilizes this thing called Star Wars Uncut, which, by the way, they're on a new version of it. They basically did exactly what you saw with Star Wars, with A New Hope, but now they've done with Empire Strikes Back. They like a whole bunch of people basically constructed the whole movie, and it's on YouTube right now. If you check it out, so again, it's primed for a sequel. But again, anyway.
Oh, it really is primed for a sequel.
So we have that. We have there are many interviews, of course, really well gotten interviews. It's masterfully edited with all of that kind of factored into it. We build the legal case for and against George Lucas, and I desperately want more and a continued story for this. They kept promising. They teased it like the year after, like a few years after this came out.
I gotta say, Dragon, after The Last Jedi, I think they probably were like, okay, we have to see how Episode 9 shakes out.
Yeah. It's either that or Disney has just kind of maybe thrown a cog in the work. I don't know. It's one of those two factors. I don't know. Sure. Anyway, so point being, a lot of love for it, and I really wish they do see. I wish they do a sequel, and the third one would be like the interview with George Lucas. That would be fascinating. Okay. Number 86. The Disaster Artist from 2017.
All right.
Okay. So, this, reflecting on the decade, this and Dolomite Is My Name are kind of the Ed Woods for the decade. They really are. This, we take an infamous film, but we give it context in a biopic on kind of the strange, enigmatic Tommy Wiseau. And, hilarious, I love. There's a focus on the friendship and the really interesting friendship between Wiseau and Greg Sestero. Of course, there's a lot of basis from the Disaster Artist book, which it gets its title from. Franco, of course, using the Franco brothers, they're great. As you can imagine, they've spent a lot of time with each other, therefore they would have developed a rapport, which definitely shows here. The recreations of the room are flawless. I feel the recreations are absolutely flawless. According to Tommy Wiseau, it's 90% accurate. Take it with a grain of salt, mind you. It's like a John Peters interview. Take it with a grain of salt. But it's a story of an odd man with conviction. Basically, it's an odd man with conviction of as he pursues his dream of like making a movie, making an industry, and kind of like keeping his friendship alive. It's kind of the ultimate example of life imitating art within the story of the film. All right.
Okay.
Number 85.
Number 85, go ahead.
Number 85, Green Book from 2018.
Oh, man. In the words of Adam Sandler from Uncut Gems, I disagree. I disagree, Gary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Unlike your like your Oscar winner, I can actually talk about mine.
Go ahead.
So Peter Farrelly, he outdid himself with this film. I feel it's a nice story of these two unlikely friends on a road trip through the South. I love the choice of honestly my favorite thing in the movie. I love the choice of building to the Nat King Cole Christmas song. I love that choice because this film very much parallels what Nat King Cole and various other black artists at the time what they went through. What they went through when they were on tour, especially going through the South when things would go wrong all the time. There'd be a lot of horror stories, and Morrison and Ali in this film, they're a great pairing. They, I feel it's a really, I think the letter thing. I love the letter runner. The letter runner through the movie, I think, is really touching. He's helping him write letters to his wife while he's on the road, and they kind of like they teach each other things throughout the movie. It's not a complicated movie. I'll fully admit it's not complicated. It's just two men from different circles, learning from the other, and there's something kind of nice and pure about that. I don't know. The Green Book always there's something kind of there's a charm in the simplicity that's just really nice.
I mean, for me, it's a solid enough movie. I certainly don't think it's Best Picture worthy, so maybe that's kind of where my bitterness comes from with this one. But I enjoyed it in the moment. It's I'm glad it stuck with you, Dragon, because it didn't really stick with me. But again, that's subjectivity, and you're right. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have had Moonlight on my list at all because I can't really talk about it. So, all right, next for Dragon. Let's wrap this up as quick as we want to get this under 2 hours. 84.
84. Dark Knight Rises from 2012.
Oh man, 2012 was a strong year for me, man. 2012 was a competitive year. Dark Knight Rises is my least favorite Nolan movie, but I still appreciate it, and I appreciated it mostly because of Bane. But go ahead, say your piece on it.
Of course, Dark Knight Rises, the finale to the Nolan trilogy, a little mixed in places. I won't lie. There's definitely, there's many points. Of course, there's many points to argue on its behalf for sure. Again, if there's some things that are defensible, then again, there's some things like twist in Act 3 that get really muddy with the Talia al Ghul and so on and so forth. I think
it's by far the Nolan movie with the most egregious plot holes, if anything else.
So it's a film that at the end of the day, I think I can argue more in Dark Knight Rises is favor, but the big takeaway, regardless of however people feel, and I think they just take the little plot holes and they don't realize. Again, Nolan's a human filmmaker. Okay, he can make mistakes. Okay, we just put it on a pedestal because of the hype wagon of Dark Knight. We just God. We learned that God can bleed. It's not a bad thing.
You know what's funny about that, Dragon, is that my hype wheel for Rises had more to do with Inception.
Right. So, honestly, the big takeaway for me is that so rarely in life do our heroes and icons get an ending when you really think about it. So rarely in life do we get to see that happen. Now it's a little bit more commonplace, but especially when this thing came out, it was such a rarity that we got to see, what if Batman had a happy ending? What if we just gave him the dignity of giving him a happy ending, giving him an out where it's something really serviceable. And this, and again, this is kind of like this is kind of like the first time we got something like that where we give kind of our heroes an ending, where, of course, now in 2019, we kind of build to this with a big crescendo. So it's something kind of interesting. The movie's well directed. I mean, I take it to the plane heist. I take it to the backbreak scene. The score's great. Anne Hathaway's Catwoman's really good. Again, the big scene stealer, Tom Hardy's Bane, of course. Just, again, the huge kind of, one of
feeling charge.
The man who's definitely committed to performance very well. Of course, many people. There's a lot of love for Bane ever since Dark Knight Rises came out. For me, again, at the end of the day, though, it's the ending of the movie still gets me, man. Like anyone, like that moment between Gordon and Batman, anyone can be a hero, and just we end on really powerful notes with Dark Knight Rises, and I can't, for that reason, I can't not put on the 100 greatest movies of the decade. Like Rises is powerful stuff, man. Not the most powerful.
I'm not a big fan of the cafe thing and the fake out death with the ending, but I do love the moment with Gordon, the whole like Bruce Wayne. I love that. And honestly, I am a fan of the final shot of the movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like that's maybe a little bit divisive, but I do like how the Batman legacy is carried on at the end.
Yeah, and of course, also that thing with Gordon and the bats thing was also really adorable too, where he says like, "Oh God, he fixed it." It's just it's a nice little. Anyway.
And of course, Alfred just like, "I failed you. I failed you."
It's a strong ending.
It is
moving. Okay, number 83. Number 83 is Incredibles 2 from 2018.
No comment. No
okay,
comment.
look, I'm going to keep it simple. Okay.
I will say that I'm glad that it was in part 2 or in part 1, Dragon. I will say that I'm glad it's in this tier.
I have a feeling. Okay, look, I'll keep it simple. Brad Bird, amazingly, 14 years later, he picked up, right where we left off, and it's an incredible in every way in that regard. The animation, the action, the heart's still there, and honestly, the most important thing in reflecting on Incredibles 2, the most important thing the movie does is it adheres to kind of like Brad Bird's kind of logic of the world of the Incredibles, and it's about aftermath and the logistical stuff. Where think about it, at the end of Incredibles, we lose, the house is blown up. It's a few months later when we have the Underminer, bear in mind, but still in that time, house is blown up, heroes are still outlawed, and Bob doesn't have a job. And we address these problems in this movie very realistically. We see the family in a relatable situation. Things aren't going that great for the Parr family as they were emotionally were in the first movie. And now it's like, okay, we got problems we got to address. So mom has to go out and kind of like defend the supers. And then we put Bob in kind of a fun Mr. Mom position, but with powers. It's you see your fun favorites returning. The favorite characters returning. They're a lot of fun. You have a few Albuquerque verse alumni or two. Don't hurt either. Seeing them in the movie. It's I'll admit the problem I have with Incredibles 2 is a little ill-defined by the end. I think everything's there. I really do think everything's there. I just feel we need to bring a little bit more to the surface and explain like where we are by the end of the movie. That's always been the thing kind of bugged me about Incredibles 2, because I have to read into too much about where our status quo is by the end. But it's could have ended could have been a little cleaner by the end. But it's a solid movie. It's a great one to put on for fun. It's a great return to form, and kind of still blows me. It gives you a great feeling, It's like, oh god, it just from the minute the Incredibles logo kind of pops up at the first moment, it's quite fun. Okay,
right,
number 82.
I do think Incredibles 2 has a great first act. I do really like the Bob stuff. I think Jack really shines in the movie. My biggest problem with Incredibles 2, Dragon, is like, at the end of the day, it really is kind of like a gender-swapped version of the premise of the first movie. And Helen is a massive hypocrite, and I don't care if she calls herself out on it. I don't know. To me, it kind of regressed her character. But, I do think it does have a lot of redeeming qualities to it. So I don't want to dwell on it too much. Anyway, sorry. I don't mean to take away from your points.
Right. Anyway,
right,
so number 82.
Yeah.
The Wolverine from 2013.
All right. I still have not seen this one.
Oh my god, you still okay? Well, anyway, so Wolverine. Let me make my case for it. So the Wolverine. It's a very underrated film since Logan's come out. Since Logan's come out, it's kind of been swept under the rug. James Mangold is the one he did before Logan. He made Jackman's wish come true by doing the tackling the Japan story for Logan. We take Wolverine to Japan. It's a great personal story for him in the aftermath of the whole Jean Grey affair, back when timelines kind of vaguely meant something. I love I love the romance that Logan has in the movie here with Mariko, one of his famous flames from the comics. That was a really, like, of all the women Wolverine's ever cared about, Mariko was like, she was always the favorite. She was always like the one, and they have really great natural relationship stuff in the movie. They don't start like head over heels or anything. There develops the bullet train sequence. Need I say more? It's just like the way that's expertly done, the bullet train sequence. The Nagasaki opening is phenomenal. The way we just open Nagasaki and we see Wolverine's healing factor put in the overdrive. It's a great character piece for Wolverine. I'll leave it at that. The third act's a little bit tricky. Basically, it works fine, but it feels man-made. Is all I'm going to say. It's like we have a villain. We have we have an extra mutant villain who feels very man-made. We need someone attractive who has like a mutant gimmick, and we need kind of a fight scene in the third act. Not bad, just a little like, yeah, the studio told them to put that in there. I can sense it. So Wolverine's really underrated. I want to highly recommend everybody check it out. Okay. Number 81. Oops. Monsters University from 2013. So, Monsters University. This is Dan Scanlon's feature debut. Of course, next to this year he's going to be tackling Onward. He's going to have that coming out, which is a personal story for him. Monsters University, I feel, gets lost in the shuffle a lot. This after all, was Pixar's first prequel. This story, this story really resonates with me on this one. It really does. I always felt there was something really unique about what we're doing here. That's the thing. I was the top three. I was really at odds like where to rank them. But honestly, Monsters University has such a strong story to it, man. It captures realistically how life. How you have goals in life and you have these plans and you face realistic obstacles and these lead to unexpected passion never expected to take. Like the film, the story, it is like we're not just taking this haphazard, like let's just dive back into the Monsters Inc. well. Like we're not doing that here. We're actually telling a story, and we're not only cementing the friendship of Mike and Sully, but we're like a lot of thought went into the movie, as in like, okay, we're in this world again. What can we do with it? We're gonna like build a monster college. What does that look like? Again, how do you learn scaring? How does that work? Like we build all of that up really well. We establish it. We do a lot of really good world building in that regard. The third act, I'm gobsmacked with still. In the animation, in the excitement and the tension of that, there's one of the ultimate Pixar matchstick moments is in there, or at least the resolution to a Pixar matchstick moment. It's quite great. This is where they started to use the global illumination software, which looks really great. It's basically they've been upgrading ever since with the Pixar movies. I just respect the heck out of this story, and it gives me great faith in Dan Scanlon's directing potential and his capabilities. I can't say enough nice things about Monsters University. It's quite good. All right.
Okay, so there we have it, Dragon. Let's go ahead and go down our list one more time. And don't forget the release dates. So I'm going to have...
Tiki, get the banner.
Sorry. Hold on. God. Want to get this in under 2 hours, but that's pretty much moot at this point anyways. Hold on. Okay. All right, for me, number 100, The Ides of March from 2011. 99, Rango from 98 from 2011. Number 97, Winnie the Pooh from 2011. Number 96, Deathly Hallows Part 2 from 2011. Number 95, 21 Jump Street from 2012. 94, Wreck-It Ralph from 2013. 93, Ted from 2012. 92, The Kids Are All Right from 2010. 91, Captain America The First Avenger from 2011. 90, Crazy Stupid Love from 2011. 89, The Great Gatsby from 2013. 88, Inside Llewellyn Davis from 2013. 87, John Wick from 2014. 86, Room from 2015. 85, Drive from 2011. 84, The Conjuring 2 from 2016. 83, Iron Man 3 from 2015. 82, The Witch from 2016. And 81, Moonlight from 2016. All right, Dragon.
All right, 100, Limitless from 2011. 99, Never Sleep Again, Nightmare on Elm Street Legacy from 2010. 98, Batman Year One from 2011. 97, John Carter from 2012. 96, Tomorrowland from 2015. 95, The Intern from 2015 as well. 94, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, 2015 again. 93, Blackfish from 2013. 92, Brigsby Bear, 2017. 91, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened from 2015. 90, Chef, 2014. 89, Rango, 2011. 88, Ted, 2012. 87, The People vs. George Lucas from 2010. 86, The Disaster Artist from 2017. 85, Green Book from 2018. 84, Dark Knight Rises from 2012. 83, Incredibles 2 from 2018. 82, The Wolverine from 2013. And 81, Monsters University from 2013.
All right, folks. Well, that'll do it for us. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Claude Karinga and Donovan Martin in the chat. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We did technically get this in under 2 hours, with a whole 20 seconds to spare. We're so good at this. Anyways, we'll be we'll be doing maybe a couple of these a month. It kind of depends on our schedule here, but stay tuned for the next one. And thanks for joining us. Have a good night.